All right, hey everybody, I am Rob Hughes. I'm here with your digital news update for 11 o'clock this morning for Atlanta News First from our digital desk. We have some top headlines to get through this morning for you, starting with a couple stories that you may be familiar with. Certainly something that we've followed now for just a little more than 48 hours now, a particularly brutal shooting in Buckhead. It was involving an Uber. You'll know what I'm talking about here if you've been following along the last several days. I'm going to punch some video up here for you. We have from Lindbergh Drive. This was as the shooting investigation was unfolding Tuesday morning. You can see there's a lot of shell casings there on the ground. And additionally, there is some updates. We now have the young woman's name who was tragically killed in this shooting Tuesday morning. So we're learning her name is Tisha Bruley. She was targeted, apparently, according to investigators, when she was shot inside an Uber. The Uber driver says Bruley was his only passenger. Despite multiple gunshots to the car, he was actually not hurt, which is pretty incredible when you see the shell casings there on the ground. Now, newly released 911 calls show the driver called to report someone shot at his vehicle, as you might imagine. We're also learning that at some point during the early morning hours, a friend who was waiting on Bruley got concerned that friend was able to track her through the Uber app and noticed that the Uber had stopped in an unusual spot for an unusual length of time. Take a listen.
To report a mobile panic alert for an Uber customer. He stated he ordered an Uber for a friend who hasn't arrived to his location yet, and the driver's location is showing to be in one spot for a long period of time.
Somebody shot, somebody killed her in my town.
So clearly a pretty disturbing set of phone calls there, including that 911 call for the driver who was working through his own circumstances there shortly after the shooting. Police say right now they are trying to backtrack to determine where Bruley had come from, but the department needs your help because there could be, what they're saying, multiple shooters. So if you know anything, please call Crime Stoppers. Again, this is a reminder, you can remain anonymous. Certainly a story that has the attention of a lot of people in Atlanta and really across our metro. Pretty disturbing that someone would be targeted potentially in an Uber ride. We're going to move on to another story that I think a lot of people probably are familiar with. This one goes back many years, actually. We're talking about the Atlanta Public Safety Training Center. This will be in DeKalb County. Of course, it is really still in the early stages of clearing out the land for this site and construction. But we can tell you there are some new developments surrounding this story, including specifically 3 protesters. So I want to pull up some video here from where some arrests happened yesterday for some of these protesters who had been involved in what they're calling Cop City. So right now we know 3 people connected to those protests are behind bars accused of financial crimes. We're talking specifically money laundering. And supporters of the protesters say they should not be there in jail and that authorities actually targeted them out of retaliation. So again, this is some video of the police raid yesterday. They held a rally last night, supporters of these protesters, and this home was on Hardy Avenue in DeKalb County, a portion of Atlanta. GBI agents and officers executed a search warrant and found evidence linking 3 people to financial crimes. They've charged them with money laundering and charity fraud. They are part of the Atlanta Solidarity Fund, which has been paying the bail of those arrested while protesting the Atlanta Public Safety Training Center site. So those who gathered last night at the jail tell us they believe the 3 were targeted for their involvement in the so-called Stop Cop City movement. And of course, we will let you know when the 3 arrested will have their first court appearance. But take a listen to what some of the supporters said about this entire situation.
This country has a strong history of raising money for bonds for people that groups feel have been wrongly incarcerated. To cut off that source of money is basically to say to a political movement, 1, we're going to arrest you, and 2, after we arrest you, there will be no one on the outside able to support you, fund you, help you get out. And that sends a really clear message.
So again, just the latest development here in this story that has gone back now several years, the latest wrinkle. Again, we'll let you know when the 3 people who were arrested will have their first court appearance. Of course, this is an entirely new wrinkle talking about charity fraud, financial crimes. So we want to get to our next story, which well, our next couple of stories actually pretty applicable to all you parents out there. And this one, well, it hits close to home for my family especially, so I'm sure a lot of you can relate out there. We're talking about childcare and the cost of childcare. If you know how expensive childcare is these days. I actually had a former coworker of mine before I had kids tell me that she estimated spending more than $30,000 a year for childcare. Congress is apparently taking a crack at solving this ongoing crisis, though, and as lawmakers consider policy changes, the question facing a lot of parents is, what can we actually do now to navigate this soaring child care cost crisis? Advocates are urging lawmakers to take action to help really American families who are struggling to find affordable options. Democrats and Republicans are clashing over the role of the federal government, though. Data from April's Consumer Price Index shows the cost of daycare or preschool has surged by 7% compared to the previous year. A Senate committee held a hearing yesterday identifying 3 key problems. We're talking the scarcity of childcare, which is definitely happening to a lot of families. We're talking about the cost of care, which is skyrocketing by many measures, and the low wages paid to employees specifically who work in the child care profession. And as a result, workers are leaving the profession in record numbers. Now, Democrats say the solution is to increase funding on the federal level, but Republicans believe more government intervention is not the answer. Take a listen.
Nation, we often talk about family values and how much we love our children, but unfortunately we have a funny way of showing that love.
It's important to note that it's become more expensive as we've pumped more federal dollars into it.
All right, now it's important to note that the child care funding from the American Rescue Plan that many American families and families specifically here in Georgia and Metro Atlanta relied upon, set to expire at the end of September. It's tough out there. Child care is hard to find, and when you do find it, it's expensive. And of course, as all you parents know, that's not an expense that you want to skimp on. You certainly want the best child care possible for your kids. I know that that's been a consideration for my family. When it's come time to look at the budget, we've decided to cut in other areas because our kids are our top priority. I know a lot of you parents out there feel the exact same way. So I have another story for you parents out there that may have kids of a little bit older age. And we're talking about what's known as the 100 deadliest days of summer. And this is pretty, sad, really, when you think about what's happening for teenage drivers, specifically in this period of time of summer. Basically, an inordinate amount of teenage driving deaths occur during this time. If you think about it, it makes sense. There's more teenage drivers on the road. They're out of school. They're going to their jobs. And really, essentially, 7 days a week feels like a weekend to them for a lot of teenagers. So there's certainly some things to consider for parents in order to keep their kids safe, including certain vehicles which are better and more safe than others. This shouldn't be a surprise to parents. A lot of people who are parents decide to choose their own car based on safety. So we can tell you that traffic crashes are the leading cause of death for teenagers from 16 to 19 years old. Every mile driven, new teen drivers are 3 times more likely to be involved in a deadly crash compared to their adults. So experience certainly a factor here. In Georgia, on average, 89 teen drivers are involved in fatal crashes each year. So a disproportionate amount of those deaths are occurring during this time period again. Now, the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety teamed up with Consumer Reports to create a list of recommended vehicles. Some wrecks include the Toyota RAV4. Those are newer model Toyota RAV4s. Same thing with the Honda CR-Vs, which is a similar SUV, and Priuses as well, built after 2013. So all newer model vehicles of those makes and models. Now, all the vehicles listed protected drivers during crash tests, and they are equipped with electronic stability control, which can prevent an accident. So just another opportunity for parents out there to talk to your teenagers, make sure that they are using their cars responsibly, driving safely. I remember every single time I left my house when I was 16 and a new driver out there, my mom told me, "Be safe, son, be safe." Okay, a little lighter note. And pun very much intended on this next story, guys. This is out of New Zealand, so not local, but still going to catch some attention. Some questionable procedural changes for an airline that's based out of New Zealand. We're talking about Air New Zealand, so if you fly them, be prepared to step on a scale. That's right. They want to weigh you. Now, it's not what you think, or at least that's what Air New Zealand is saying. The airline says the data is being recorded anonymously, and so they say that it's going to be kept private. It's only going to be used, apparently, to help improve fuel efficiency. But I'll ask you this. How comfortable would you be stepping on a scale for an airline at your airport? I suspect most passengers would not be all that happy. It is one of the most privately held pieces of information for people for a variety of reasons. It's just one of those things that a lot of people do not like to share with anybody else, sometimes even their partners, which is it's just an interesting deal. This airline wants to weigh you, wants to know how much you weigh so that apparently it can better disperse the weight on airplanes. Again, that's what they're saying. Whether or not that's the case, who could say? All right, so that is the end of our digital update for you. Some of the headlines we're following. It's going to be another nice and mild day for you out there. Just giving you a live look outside from the north end of the perimeter in Sandy Springs, looking back towards Atlanta. We have the latest first alert forecast for Atlanta News First at noon. Wish you guys all a great Thursday, and we'll see you at noon.